Hello and welcome to part 2 of our new video series on who's stronger between Herman Munster and Gomez Addams. If you haven't seen part 1, please check it out. But also, I'm going to argue with it. I feel like Gomez Addams could kick Herman Munster's ass, and I'm going to prove this to you with 5 points, so listen up. But before we get into that, I just want to throw some shade. In our video of Herman Munster versus Gomez Addams, a lot of my pro-Addams audio seems to have made the cutting room floor, which made what was left in the video not make a whole lot of sense. So I want to go through some of the points I was trying to make in that video so that's more clear and concise, and by that I mean 1 point in the video. This is my real sticking point, Mark. I liked that line. It got cut out. I was doing some research and discovered that the plot of the Addams Family pinball machine states that you are, quote, entering the world of the Addams Family, end quote. This line was cut out of the video for some reason, which made my reference later on about pinball machines not make any sense. Not that this seems to make much more sense to begin with, but pinball machines do actually have lore. Right now, the most popular pinball machine is considered by many to be the 1997 masterpiece, Medieval Madness. To say that a pinball machine doesn't have a plot is tantamount to saying video games don't have plots. I do extrapolate heavily based on loose wording, which is why I suggest that the pinball machine for the Addams Family seems to suggest that the characters are otherworldly, but they definitely are. With that in mind, here are the top 5 reasons why Gomez Addams is stronger than Herman Munster. Number 5. The Family Crest. Sic gorgiamus a los subjectatos nunc. These are the words that adorn the Addams estate as seen in the 1991 theatrical film. Its meaning is now well known among the horror enthusiast community and lends more credence to my claim that the Addams Family are a group of cannibals. It translates to, "We gladly feast on those who would subdue us." It is through this motto that they live their lives atop the cemetery. The Addams Family is a tight-knit group that fears nothing and will stop at nothing to destroy their enemies and do it in the most perky goth way imaginable. Number 4. The affluence. FactFane does a really good job talking about how wealthy Gomez Addams is, noting that he's descended from the British aristocracy and Castilian royalty, inheriting all of that fortune. It then goes on to invest that money in successful ventures as well. The Addams Family started out as a series of 1930s New Yorker political cartoons, and as such his wealth was without question. His total net worth is not exactly known, but it's somewhere in the multiple billions. To put this in perspective, Mr. Burns from The Simpsons is estimated to be worth roughly $1 billion. So Gomez Addams is multiple times richer than Mr. Burns. Forbes magazine estimated his wealth actually at being approximately $2.5 billion, which means this guy could buy and sell Mr. Burns at a loss and still have more money than Herman Munster could ever even dream of. Number 3, the successes. It is literally impossible for Gomez Addams to fail at anything, even when he wants to, even when he attempts to do something he doesn't know how to do, even when he actively tries to fail, he cannot fail. It's gotten to the point where he's just frankly annoyed at it.
I do hope my darling Gomez fails.
Side note, the character Dirk Gently from Dirk Gently's Holistic Detective Agency has a very similar issue where he kept being accidentally psychic to the point it was getting him in trouble with the law. This was further explored in the comic book series by showing Dirk as a child being held captive in a government vault and forcibly predicting 9/11, but being unable to stop it from happening in time. This is the typical fear Americans have when it comes to having an unnatural gift. The idea that the government would attempt to capitalize on this gift for militaristic purposes. Dirk Gently was one of many projects they had in the second TV show. So they had Dirk Gently as like a... It's fucking complicated. I'll talk about it later in a different video. Dirk Gently was known as Project Icarus, and his holistic penchants were applied to every other project they had, such as Bart being a holistic assassin, or Mona Wilder being a holistic actress. I would submit to you that Gomez Addams is a holistic philanthropist, saying that everything is fundamentally interconnected, and being unable to fail because of this. Number 2, the rite of passage. Here's some spoilers for the new 2019 animated feature, so spoiler alert. The plot is separated into two halves. One half is the relationship between Wednesday and Morticia, which honestly, that plotline peters out and goes nowhere. Like, I saw the reviews for this movie, the actual critics gave it really low scores, and I can see why. Like, that plot goes nowhere. Overall, the movie's good, but you can't... There's no satisfying conclusion to this arc. On the other hand, though, the other half of the movie is Gomez making sure Pugsley is ready for the Addams Family rite of passage, which entails a complicated swords display. It's while Pugsley is preparing for this, Uncle Fester actually sings Gomez's praises, citing him as the most skilled swordsman in the entire Addams extended family. From what we see of the fast-paced nuance of the dance, which I can't really show here due to the fact that the movie is still in theaters and I don't have the footage for it, it's something like jumping into a spinning blender and protecting yourself with a butter knife that's been greased up on the handle. Suffice to say, Pugsley does not succeed in this rite of passage, being more into demolitions and explosives, which comes in handy since that's what they need to protect the house at the end of the movie. The movie culminates in a musical montage of Pugsley saving the Addams family in his own unique way. That's enough about the new movie. The main point, Gomez apparently succeeded in the Mamushka sword-fighting rites of passage in ways that no other Addams member has ever previously displayed. This is a family that dates back hundreds of years, and every member of the family is a skilled swordsman except for their current children. This means Gomez is the most skilled swordsman in the family and possibly the entire world. Compare his sword fighting to a Midra Maru from Shaman King, someone who's trained for 600 years. No one knows how old Gomez is for sure, but he's mastered at least 600 years of sword fighting techniques, so I feel that's a pretty good comparison. Number 1, the longevity. Here's where we kind of rub salt in Mark's wounds. But first an aside. Let's look at the rivalry between Sega and Nintendo in the 1990s. Sega put out ads saying Sega does what Nintendo don't, and other things, showing that their company and their mascot was better than Nintendo and Mario. Yet, as we all know, this proved not to be the case, as clearly Sega had fallen by the wayside. I bring this up as an analogy for typical dueling brands. The Addams Family and the Munsters both seem to have started in the 1960s with dueling TV shows, with the Munsters being made as a direct competitor, with more obvious monster visuals to try to draw a crowd. But here's the thing people forget, Nintendo started in the 1800s. Nintendo was around for nearly 100 years before Sega started. They made playing cards, toys, and ran hotels before jumping into the video game business. Sega jumped in and tried to compete against a company that already had a long history of business practices before they did. In a similar fashion, the Addams Family existed as a political comic strip starting in the 1930s, like 3 decades before being developed for TV. To explain the weird nature of 1960s television, quick aside, and to give fair points to both, the Addams Family and the Munsters were met with some controversy. The Addams Family was the first show to have an intimate couple. Gomez kissing up and down Morticia's arm was an incredible risque decision. The Munsters attempted to one-up the sex factor by being one of the first shows to have a married couple share a bed. I mean, sure, Herman is big and all, but how long did he last in bed anyway? The 2 shows lasted for the same amount of time, 2 seasons, but the Addams Family came back in 1991, lasted 2 more theatrical movies in that decade, got a direct-to-video sequel which spun off into a new live-action TV show. In 1973, they had an animated series that crossed over with Scooby-Doo. They had a 1977 TV Halloween special and a 1992 animated series. That's not even mentioning the spin-off game Uncle Fester got in the 80s, as well as the new movie. And of course, we can't forget about the pinball game! Want to do stats? Let's pull out some numbers. Strength, 7. Although it's true Herman Munster is more physically strong than Gomez, I think you'll agree that the other stats are going to make up for that. Intelligence, 7. Gomez Addams has what I call a holistic business practice. No matter what he says or does, it ends up accurate, or it proves he was a smart businessman. Speed, 8. Gomez proves time and time again with his sword fighting and reflexes that he has incredibly high speed. We're not talking superhuman here, don't get me wrong. He's not the Flash, but he's about on par with Ozymandias from Watchmen. 10. Gomez could probably catch a bullet in his hand if he really wanted to. Adherent 10. Here's the thing, Gomez doesn't need to catch the bullet in his hand. The Addams family are functionally immortal and regularly torture and maim each other for fun. There's no two ways around it. That stat has to be all the way up. Rank 9. Being a multi-billionaire and occasionally making the Forbes fictional 15 wealthiest characters list, Gomez Addams is an incredibly high ranking in certain social circles. I took a point off because wealthy wasps and socialites don't seem to like him very much though, so they're not going to really invite him to too many social gatherings because of the way he acts, as a fighter. Courage 10. Did you guys ever see Rusty Cage do the knife game while blindfolded? And you watch that and think to yourself, why would anyone do that? And then you watch the video of him doing it again after leaving the knife on the stovetop until it glows red hot. And you're like, no sane person would ever do this. And then you realize that the premise of the Addams family is that the family does that sort of thing all the time while laughing and joking about it. Yeah, courage is a 10. Firepower 8. While Herman Munster was burning sweet nothings into the side of a boat, Gomez Addams was studying the blade. Skill 10. Gomez Addams' sword fighting is unmatched by anyone else in his family, and to draw a comparison, I brought up a 600-year-old anime sword fighting ghost. When I bring up a Major Maru as being on par with a character and not a common writer, like, come on, I'm actually pulling out the big guns here. I'm actually doing research. All that is to say, I think Gomez would actually win in the fight. Now, if you excuse me, I'm running late to my pinball convention. So until next time, this has been Brian from the Tidepool Orchestra, ready to pin some balls.